All right, everybody, I'm Logan Alec. I'm a CPA. Today, I'm reviewing a platform that I use on a regular basis to track my spending and my net worth over time. That platform is called Personal Capital. So in this video, I'm going to simply walk you through Personal Capital here on screen as though I was a new user, how to get started, how to set it up, how to link your accounts. After the walkthrough, I'm going to share with you the pros and cons of Personal Capital in my opinion. Then at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you who, in my opinion, are the kinds of people that Personal Capital is probably a good fit for, as well as the kinds of people that Personal Capital may not be the best fit for, and who may want to use another personal finance platform to track their situation. Before we jump into it, I do want to mention that I have my referral link to Personal Capital in the description below. If after watching this video you want to check out Personal Capital for yourself, I would really appreciate it if you use my link in the description. If you do so and you sign up for Personal Capital through my link and you link an investment account to Personal Capital, like a brokerage account, your retirement account, your 401k, IRA, whatever, if you link an investment account to Personal Capital with a balance of at least $1,000 in it, then you'll get a $20 Amazon gift card from Personal Capital, and so will I. That's a nice little bonus for signing up through my referral link in the description below. All right, let's dive into it here. Like I said, I already do have a Personal Capital account, but I'm going to create one from scratch here just to show you how it works. So let's dig right in. I'm going to do the walkthrough here on the app. Personal Capital does have a desktop version as well, but I like to do these walkthroughs in the app. Obviously, the desktop version has the same functionality. So here I am installing the app on my phone. There we go. Then when you first download the app, you are presented with a few screens you can swipe through. First one is just the name Personal Capital. Obviously, underneath that, it says it's an Empower company. What is this? Well, Empower Retirement is basically a company that helps businesses manage their retirement programs. Last year, Empower Retirement bought Personal Capital for $825 million cash on closing. It looks like there's an additional contingency for $175 million for planned growth, so $1 billion total with that contingency. So naturally, Empower Retirement wants to get more assets under management, so it's possible this acquisition will lead to more sales pitches from Personal Capital to you. You know, maybe you just want to use the platform for free, right? But they might pitch you to shift some assets to Empower Retirement. In the press release, the CEO of Empower also talked about integrating Personal Capital's tools into Empowerment's platform, so that could be an angle there as well. Just know that Personal Capital is owned by a larger company now whose mission is to manage your money. Personally, my opinion is that you don't really need anybody to manage your money unless you have an extremely complicated situation, right? You could probably do just as well with a few index funds. If you're wondering more about that, check out my Prosper course, link in the description below with a coupon code for my loyal YouTube audience. In that course, I go over my personal approach to investing, budgeting, retirement accounts, taxes, all that good stuff. All right, moving on in Personal Capital. Next screen you can swipe to is basically what you already know. This is going to have all your accounts in one place, basically saying, look, you can link all your bank accounts, all your investment accounts, all your retirement accounts, your credit cards, mortgages, whatever, to Personal Capital and get a comprehensive look at your financial picture in Personal Capital. Next screen here, if you swipe again, dedicated financial advisors. So this is the revenue model here, right? Yes, as of right now, you can use Personal Capital completely free to track your accounts like I do. I just use the free software to track my accounts, but Personal Capital obviously has your data when you do that. They see how much you have in your investment account. They obviously want you to move your money over to them so they can make more money. I can't tell you how many phone calls I receive from Personal Capital asking me to move my money to be managed by them. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Whenever I see a 720 number pop up on my phone, I know that's Personal Capital calling. I don't answer it. But I don't begrudge them for trying to pitch me their services, right? Personally, I feel it's not for me. This isn't a dig on Personal Capital at all. I feel this way about any financial advisor, but I could see how it might be useful to some people who don't feel comfortable managing their own money. Moving right along, next screen you can swipe to is just showing you a graph, right? Track your cash flow. Personal Capital has graphs for your net worth, your spending, all that. I'll cover all that in this video and show you what I mean. Finally, I swipe to the last screen here and I input my email address and I click submit. I create a password, give them my cell phone number for the two-factor authentication, which is probably a good idea, right, to set up for a site like Personal Capital. Then they sent me a text message to my phone to verify that I do own that phone number. I type that code in. Then there we go. I basically completed my profile in Personal Capital. I input my name, current age I want to retire at, current savings. And then I'm prompted to link my first account. So I decided to link my M1 Finance accounts. If you don't know, I'm using M1 Finance more and more to automate my investing in low-cost index fund ETFs. If you haven't seen my M1 Finance review video, I welcome you to take a look. Link to that video at the top of the screen as well as in the description below. So I tell Personal Capital I want to link my M1 Finance account. To do that, I input the email I use to log into to M1 Finance as well as my password, as well as whether or not I have two-factor authentication on M1 Finance, because I'll need to do that in order to link me to Personal Capital. Then I click continue. So once M1 Finance is linked to Personal Capital, now I see the balance there. So my total M1 Finance balance across all my M1 Finance accounts is $340,165.14. Then it breaks it down below that. You can see all my M1 Finance accounts broken out separately there. If you click on one of the accounts, in this case the first one, you can see the deposits I made to the account every day, etc. Investment accounts are not the only accounts you can link in M1 Finance. You can also link bank accounts, for example. Now I'm going to link my Chase personal bank account to Personal Capital. It will import that account as well. Once that is synced, you can see that that account is updated as well with its transactions showing in the detailed view. And the net worth tracker at the top is updated to include those new balances. So I'm not going to link all my investment accounts here. I'm not going to link, my business bank account, real estate, mortgages, all that, because you get the point, right? You can link your accounts to Personal Capital, and Personal Capital will automatically in real time pull information from your account and update your balances and transactions within Personal Capital so you can see your comprehensive financial picture in real time. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that Personal Capital cash item there under cash that shows up. This is basically just Personal Capital kind of giving you a soft pitch, so to speak, for its cash management account. Personal Capital is not in it itself a bank, but it partners with a bank called UMB Bank. So if you set up Personal Capital Cash, your account is actually with a bank called UMB. Personal Capital gets a kickback, obviously. There's nothing really here that interested me very much. I don't know about you, but I don't really get hot and bothered by 0.05% APY, right? That means if you have $10,000 in this account, you'll make $5 of interest in a year's time. I don't get too excited about that. Not to say this is a bad product. That's just the interest rate environment we're in right now. Not for me right now. It looks like a decent product though. No fees, FDI insurance up to 1.5 million rather than the typical 250,000. I'm sure there's some fine print there, but like I said, nothing here to really tempt me to go through the hassle of leaving my current bank, Chase. So I didn't test it out, but if anyone out there has used Personal Capital Cash, please let me know your thoughts in the description below. Anyway, moving right along through the app, back to the main net worth screen, I do want to show you something. If you click the plus button in the upper right, you'll be taken to the screen where you can link more accounts. Personal Capital does support a lot of different banks, brokerages, mortgage companies, credit card companies, all that sort of thing, which you can link as I showed you previously. You can search for yours in the search bar here, but if Personal Capital happens to not support a particular account, you can manually add it. For example, here on the channel, I recently reviewed a fine art investment platform called Masterworks. Link to that review is at the top of the screen as well as in the description below if you're curious about it. Well, I can't link my Masterworks account to Personal Capital. It's not supported. But what I can do is manually input it so I can still track it. Click that plus button at the top right, then click on the bottom there where it says add manual account. Here you'll be prompted to manually add whatever account you want to add. So my Masterworks case, it's an investment holding. So I select manual investment holdings. Then I just add the information about the account. Account name is Masterworks. I kind of screwed this up while recording it, but under holding, it actually wants you to put an actual ticker symbol or it won't accept it. So under description, I put Masterworks 58 LLC, which if you watch my Masterworks review video, you know that's the Masterworks LLC I invested in. I purchased 25 Class A shares for $20 each. So my cost basis there is $500. I'm assuming the price per share hasn't gone up since then. Hard to say, right, within a liquid asset like this, but I'm assuming it's still the $20 per share I paid for them. Personal Capital does make you put something in the holding field, even though obviously this Masterworks LLC doesn't have a ticker symbol. I still just put 0000. It took it just to make Personal Capital happy. So after I've done that, my Masterworks account is now in my Personal Capital account. Of course, because it's not a synced account, it's not going to automatically update. It's a manual account. I have to manually update it if I were to make another Masterworks investment or whatever. But now you can see Masterworks there at the very bottom of the investment grouping on the net worth screen. Okay, so now let's go to the three dots in the upper right-hand corner. There are a few options there. First one is just to check out Personal Capital Cash again, which we've already talked about. Then there's the option to set the date range. I don't think I can really do this in this example because I just recently linked my account, so it doesn't have the data for, months and years. But if you want to see this chart here and look at your net worth growth or possibly decline over time, you can set the date range that you want Personal Capital to show you. Under settings, there are some very basic settings you can update. Under account, you can update your contact information. Under preferences, there are some more basic settings. Nothing really much to speak of in depth here. Then under profile, you can add a household member, update information about yourself, and theoretically, because Personal Capital kind of has a robo financial advisor aspect to it, the more information you feed it, the more accurate guidance it can theoretically give you. And I'll show you what that robo guidance looks like in a few minutes in this video. In your profile, you can also update your address, income sources, risk tolerance, other stuff that's fairly self-explanatory. I'm not going to get into it in this video. All right, now let's leave behind that three-dot menu and go over to the hamburger menu in the upper left. First thing I want to show you here is Personal Capital's current referral program. As of the time of recording this, right, this is accurate, but it could be different by the time you watch this video if they change the referral program. Basically, how it works is if you give someone your your referral code and they link at least one valid investment account, brokerage, 401k, IRA, whatever, containing a balance of more than $1,000 within 30 days of registering with your link, you each get a $20 Amazon gift card. Pretty straightforward, right? So if Personal Capital sounds like something you would be interested in, I invite you, and I'd be very appreciative if you use my referral link in the description below, so we'll both get a $20 Amazon gift card. If you click on transactions, that's where you can see all the transactions in your linked accounts. You can see all of them, or just a deposit, or just the expenses. This is kind of useful, but what I think is cooler is the next two items on this menu that basically show you in graphical format how your money is moving. So under cash flow, you can see for the month, in this case August, I'm recording this in August, how much your income exceeded your expenses, or vice versa for the month by day. And again, you can isolate by just income or just expenses, so that's something you can kind of have fun with. If you go to budgeting in the menu, this is just focusing in on your expenses, so you can kind of see what categories of expenses you're spending the most money on. Now, I will say that when it comes to this budgeting feature, specifically categorizing expenses, Personal Capital isn't quite as smart about it as, say, Mint is. So this is one area where Personal Capital does come up a bit short. You can, however, go into your transactions and easily change the category for each transaction. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if Personal Capital gets smart about it, meaning that if you consistently recategorize a certain expense into a certain category, will it create a rule for itself to always categorize that expense into that category you set? I didn't really see that going on here when I was recategorizing all these M1 finance transfers, which Personal Capital categorizes online services, but it's really investment, so I recategorized them all to securities trades. Now let's move on from the income and expense kind of budgeting aspect to Personal Capital and move on to where it really shines, which is breaking down your complete investment profile for you in various ways so you can analyze it. So going back to the hamburger menu, if you click portfolio, you're taken to a screen that shows you how much of your investment accounts increased or decreased in value today. So for example, my M1 Finance account called Random Vanguard Stuff increased by 1.01% today, which equated to a $2,261.80 increase. You can see this for all the accounts. The Chase ones are so large because I just added them today, the increase, right? So they're obviously an anomaly. But this is pretty cool, right? And if you click on an individual account, it shows you the daily increase for particular investments you own in those accounts. So that's cool. But what's even cooler is the holdings and allocations tab, which is something called a U index. And what this is basically if your investments that you hold, all of them, were an index fund, what would the return of that fund be over, in this case, a 90-day period or a one-day period? You can see your U index compared to various indices like the S&P 500, for example. You can see right there plainly if you've outperformed or underperformed the market. I know that will be eye-opening to many people who busy themselves with constantly picking and buying and selling individual stocks. And then if you click this little arrow image, not sure what you call that, Personal Capital shows you something really cool, which is the sector allocation of your stock portfolio. Of course, I don't have my entire portfolio in here. I only linked my M1 Finance investment accounts. I have an IRA at Chase 2 linked to. But this is really cool because here I can see graphically if this were my entire portfolio, right? I'm pretty heavy in U.S. stocks. Right? And maybe I should allocate a little bit more to international stocks, right? And what's interesting here is if I click, for example, I click on alternatives, it'll show me my allocation for alternative asset classes like real estate and precious metals. I was kind of confused because I don't hold any real estate stocks or funds in my portfolio. But what Personal Capital actually did is look at the various index fund ETFs I hold and determine for each of those ETFs what percentage of the portfolio or that fund's holdings is real estate, right? And I made the determination that 3.59% of my portfolio, or at least the portfolio I've linked to Personal Capital, is real estate. There's this gray unclassified section. I found the manual investment holdings typically end up there. Unfortunately, I haven't found a way to tell Personal Capital to categorize it otherwise. I don't think that can be manually done, or at least not in the app in my experience. One more cool thing is this holdings and allocation section is if you tap that infinite arrow image thing again, you can also select to view your portfolio by sector. So here's a breakdown of my portfolio, well, at least in the accounts I linked to M1 Finance by sector. So obviously the biggest box there is technology, and a lot of that is driven by the fact that with some exception, the U.S. companies with the biggest market cap, right, the top 5, the only trillion-dollar companies in the United States, that's Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Facebook, they're all tech companies whose valuations have just gone through the roof, right, over the past decade or so. And the incredible thing is that if you go further down the list of companies with the largest market cap in the U.S., these companies just start dwarfing these non-tech companies. You have number 10, JP Morgan Chase. Facebook has twice Chase's market cap. Microsoft almost 5 times its market cap. Apple over 5 times its market cap. So that's why my portfolio is so tech heavy here. But looking at this can give you some insights. Maybe you want to start looking at index funds that aren't so heavily market cap weighted to kind of bring down your exposure to tech, for example. So in my opinion, this is where Personal Capital really really shines, because most of us today, we don't have all our money with one institution. Personally, I have the bulk of my portfolio at Fidelity. We have our kids' 529 plans at Vanguard. My wife's IRAs are at Vanguard. Mine are at Fidelity. I started using M1 Finance a lot as well in the past year. I have a Robinhood account and other brokerage accounts as well. So it's nice to have this dashboard in Personal Capital that aggregates all the information about all your investments so you can see your entire portfolio right here in front of you. This is really Personal Capital's strong suit. Now let's go back to the menu there and check out the investment checkup feature. These are basically recommendations that Personal Capital is making to you based on what it knows about you, what you've told it, your age, obviously your portfolio and accounts you've linked to Personal Capital. And look, this investment checkup feature is not a human advisor. It's algorithmically based, so just take it for what it is. It gives you some things to think about your financial situation, but if you're already confident in what you're doing as far as investing goes, don't completely upend everything just based on what Personal Capital's investment checkup says you should be doing. So this investment checkup has three components. One is Personal Capital's opinion, so to speak, of your asset allocation. That's basically just how much of your portfolio is made up of stocks versus how much is made up of bonds, because theoretically, bonds are less volatile than stocks, right? So in theory, right, conventional asset allocation would say the older you are, the greater percentage of your portfolio should be in bonds as opposed to stocks. Personally, I'm in my 30s. I don't personally invest in bonds at my age. I actually create a video about why I personally don't invest in bonds. If you want to check that video out, there's a link at the top of the screen, as well as in the description below. But Personal Capital appears to disagree, right? They say under asset allocation in this investment checkup that based on my profile, my asset allocation may be too aggressive and that adding bonds would increase diversification. And if I click on asset allocation, it gives me more information on why it feels this way, as at least insofar as robotic investment algorithms can feel. And above that, it basically tells me what it recommends my allocation should be. So it says right now I have 0% of my portfolio, or at least the portion of my portfolio that I've linked to M1 Finance. 0% is an international bonds. You can see that in the current column. But Personal Capital believes that based on my age, what I've told Personal Capital about myself, Personal Capital believes I should have 2.5% of my portfolio in international bonds, as it says in the target column. So for one thing, I just want to mention this current column is out of whack because, again, I've only linked my M1 Finance and Chase accounts at Personal Capital. It's not everything, right? So I do actually have more exposure to international stocks in my overall portfolio. I would probably be, based on the stratification here, most overweight in real estate, just based on the fact that we have a home, we have rental units, right? Things like that. But anyway, I think if you look at this investment checkup asset allocation for what it is, to provide you with a comparison of your current portfolio to a conventional asset allocation framework, it's helpful, right? Maybe you look at this and say, wow, maybe I do need more international exposure in my portfolio, right? In my opinion, what Personal Capital tells you shouldn't be the be-all, end-all of your asset allocation, but if it makes you ask questions about your portfolio, whether you're too heavy somewhere or too light somewhere else, it's done its job in my opinion. Back to the investment checkup main screen, there's a section called stocks. Under stocks, it says you have sector concentration risk. Technology is 26.17% of your stock portfolio. So what this is telling me is that of my stock portfolio, I may have too much in the tech sector, right? And maybe want to increase my exposure to other sectors. I already know that, right? I touched on that earlier, so I'm not going to elaborate anymore on this. Then there's costs, right? What Personal Capital does here is basically look at the index funds and ETFs you're invested in and say, hey, are any of them charging you super high fees, right? Super high expense ratios. And they would alert you to that here. So that's pretty cool. Now, thankfully, I don't have that issue because I intentionally invest for the most part in low cost index fund ETFs. So if I click costs, it says you pay a total of 0.4% each year in fund fees. In 20 years, it's going to cost you $6,200. Well, 0.4% is extremely low. Thank you, Vanguard ETFs. But lots of people out there are invested, thanks to their investment advisor, in super expensive mutual funds. Like, for example, here's a Ridex S&P 500 mutual fund. It charges investors 1.65% a year. This doesn't come out of their account. It's baked into the value of their shares. But essentially, this mutual fund is charging investors 1.65% a year to invest in the S&P 500. And they're not even shy about it. It says this fund seeks to provide investment results that match before fees and expenses the performance of the S&P 500 index on a daily basis. And it does that, right? If you look at this chart here, you can see that, yes, it tracks the S&P 500 index, the red line. But investors consistently get 1.65% less than the S&P 500 due to this fund's, in my opinion, unjustifiable fees. Because look, if you want to invest in an index fund that tracks the S&P 500, you could just invest in VFIAX, the Vanguard 500 Index Fund Admiral Shares Index Fund, which only has an expense ratio of 0.04%. Tracks the same index as the Ridex fund with an expense ratio equal to less than 2.5%, that of the Ridex fund. Compare here the chart of the VFIAX versus the Ridex fund. In both charts, the red line is the S&P 500 index in and of itself. The blue line is the performance of the particular index fund itself after fees. Why would you invest in this when you could invest in this? It just doesn't make sense. So Personal Capital will look at your investment portfolio, look to see if you're paying too much in fund fees, And if you happen to be in a fund like this Ridex fund, it would flag that here in the cost section of the investment checkup. Before we move on from this, I want to mention a couple more things about that Vanguard fund, VFIAX, and that is that you do need at least $3,000 to invest in VFIAX because it's Vanguard's Admiral shares. However, and this is actually my preferred option for reasons I'll probably talk about in another video, but Vanguard also has an ETF version of this index fund, which is ticker symbol VOO, which has an even lower expense ratio of 0.03%. It's trading right now a little over $400, but there are platforms like M1 Finance, right? Like I said, link to my M1 Finance review in the description below, where you can fractionally trade into VOO with only $100. Okay. All right, let's move on. The last section there in the personal capital investment checkup section is to schedule a call to personal capital financial advisor, because that's the strategy here, right? They want you to look at these free, computerized, algorithmically determined recommendations and think, wow, if personal capital is providing me this much value for free, how much more value could I get if I hire one of their financial advisors to help me with my situation? And if you just don't want to be involved in your investing at all, you just don't, that might be a decent option, right, to hire somebody. I haven't tried them out or anything, but in general, I believe that I can do just as good a job managing my money as a financial advisor could, whether at personal capital or anywhere else. Again, just my opinion. Then if we go back to the hamburger menu, the next option is financial planning. This is where you can tell personal capital more information about your situation. The personal capital will tell you if you're on track for retirement. So for example, you can input your age, when you were born, the age you want to retire at. I think we already did that during the setup. But also your marital status, your spouse's name and birth year and when they want to retire, your current savings, how much you think you can save on a yearly basis, how much you want to spend in retirement. There's a box you can check if you want personal capital to estimate your monthly retirement spending based on your current spending. You can also input your annual income, your spouse's annual income, and then personal capital will tell you, look, based on what you told us and based on your current investments and what you want to spend in retirement and when you want to retire, you have, in my case here, an 88% chance of successfully retiring. That is, retiring at the age you want to and able to spend the money you want to spend a month in retirement. Just as a side note here, I have noticed that when I start looking at my stuff in Personal Capital, maybe not so much in the app, but on the desktop version, Personal Capital, I'm sure, can track those clicks, and within like literally an hour of me checking out my retirement screen in Personal Capital, Personal Capital gives me a call. I just got another one as I was preparing for this review, as I was going through my Personal Capital. This next one here, retirement savings, I frankly don't know what this is getting at. I don't know why there's a negative number here. Personal Capital, if you're watching this, I suggest you take a look at this and make it a little more clear what this one means. Then finally, at the bottom, they look at your cash balance and compare it to what Personal Capital thinks your emergency fund should be. For me, apparently, they think I should have an emergency fund of between $21,300 and $42,600. I guess that's probably just based on my spending. That seems a bit high. Obviously, I do have more cash than $1,997, but I have it linked all my accounts for this example. Then at the very bottom, they give me one teaser improvement. They say change your asset allocation to reduce your risk without sacrificing return. And you can click see more improvements. And of course, once you click that, what do you see? You do see the other suggested improvements there at the bottom, but you also see another prompt to schedule a call with a personal capital advisor. You can click that button, schedule a call, and you'll be taken to a calendar where you can book a time with a financial advisor to give you a personalized recommendation. Needless to say, I did not do this. If anyone has done this, please let me know how that went. My goal in this video is not to review Personal Capital's financial advisor services, but the app and the platform itself, which you can access for free as I do. And as far as that's concerned, I just have a couple more things to go over before talking about the pros and cons and wrapping up this video. So back to the hamburger menu, you can click financial advisor. That's another prompt to schedule a call with Personal Capital. Then finally, you can check out the Daily Capital blog, which is basically just Personal Capital's blog. All right, so that's the app, folks. That is the Personal Capital platform. Now, before I talk about the pros and cons, I just want to mention one thing that I know is a concern for many people when they sign up for a platform like this and they have to put their passwords and login information, right, to all their accounts. Now, I'm just going to be upfront here. I'm not a data security expert. That is not my field of expertise. But what Personal Capital says about itself in terms of security is this. Personal Capital secures all data with AES 256 encryption, the same rigorous standards used by the U.S. military. Logging into your account requires multi-factor and biometric identification. Behind the scenes, Personal Capital's fiduciary standard demands strict internal controls of client data. Personal Capital also operates a crowdsourced security bounty program, so dozens of people, both internally and externally, are working to ensure that Personal Capital is safe. You can read all that, of course, and be somewhat convinced of Personal Capital security, but here's what you got to realize, folks. No entity on earth can be 100% perfect when it comes to security. So yes, there is risk here. The thing that made me comfortable with Personal Capital, one of the major things, is that its co-founder and first CEO, Bill Harris, his background was internet security. You just look at his LinkedIn profile. He was a CEO of Intuit, the CEO of PayPal. He led internet security companies, Ironmark and Passmark Security. So this is something that Personal Capital took seriously from the beginning. And as far as I know, in Personal Capital's over a decade of being around, there haven't been any significant security breaches. And now that it has been purchased by Empower, which as one of the country's largest retirement services provider probably knows a thing or two about security, I have to think that Personal Capital is now even more secure. Again, no platform or entity anywhere, no personal finance app or platform, no institution, no bank, no government can guarantee 100% security at all times, that it will never be breached ever, ever, ever. There is always risk with these things, but just speaking personally here, since I use it myself, I'm obviously comfortable with the security features of Personal Capital as a user of the platform for my own investments. All right, now what I would like to do is talk about the pros and cons of Personal Capital. Let's start with the pros. First pro is that it's free, at least to use the basic functionality of tracking your investments and other accounts. You really can't beat that. You're getting a lot of value for free. Second pro is that, in my opinion, when it comes to tracking your investments and breaking down your net worth by asset class and showing you your asset allocation, your sector allocation for stocks and all that, no other app that I've used comes close to Personal Capital in terms of the user interface. Obviously, there's a degree of subjectivity here, but I really do think that Personal Capital has really nailed it when it comes to investment tracking, that aspect here. Pro number 3 is that it's fairly easy to use and self-explanatory. There's not a whole lot of mystery here. You tell Personal Capital a little bit about yourself, you link your accounts, and you're off to the races. Pro number 4 is the security measures that Personal Capital takes to secure users' data, as well as the fact that one of its co-founders and its first CEO, Bill Harris, had a professional background as CEO of top financial companies like Intuit and PayPal, as well as a background in internet security. Finally, pro number 5 is the pretty cool referral program. I touched on it earlier in the video, but if you, for example, sign up through Personal Capital through my referral link in the description below, and if you link an investment account to Personal Capital with a balance of at least $1,000 in it, then you will get a $20 Amazon gift card from Personal Capital, and so will I. And of course, after you personally sign up for Personal Capital, you will likewise have the ability to refer others, and both you and they will likewise be rewarded with $20 Amazon gift cards. Now let's talk about the cons of Personal Capital. Con number 1 is that not all accounts link properly to Personal Capital. Obviously, the ones that I showed you here on One Finance and Chase work fairly well, but on my actual Personal Capital account, my real one, there are issues with syncing accounts at various institutions of Personal Capital. Of course, your mileage may vary on this point, but just know that not all account integrations are as seamless as M1 Finance's and Chase's. And frankly, some of that, from what I understand, some of that is an issue with Personal Capital, but some of that is really an issue with the bank or the investment brokerage or whatever. Con number 2 is the budgeting and money management features. They're not as seamless as perhaps a platform like Mint, or you need a budget. For one thing, as far as I can tell, the ability to automatically categorize transactions is not as robust as those platforms. It seems that if a certain transaction or company you pay should be categorized as category X, but by default Personal Capital categorizes as a category Y, Personal Capital doesn't appear to learn over time to start automatically categorizing it as category X. That appears to be something you would have to do manually every time. Finally, con number 3 is the fact that you will be upsold to Personal Capital's personal finance advisor services somewhat frequently as you use the platform. It's not overly annoying, but just something to know. All right, now that we've talked about the pros and cons, let me paint you a picture of kinds of folks for whom Personal Capital would probably be a good fit for, and then I'll give you an example of a kind of person for whom Personal Capital may not be the best fit. So personally, I think Personal Capital is great for the person who has investments all over the place, and they just want to see a complete picture of their financial situation right in front of them in an app. This person has something of an established investment portfolio they've built up over the years, and they want a good overview of it, and they even want to see how it lines up against some conventional investment wisdom. Now, another great kind of person that Personal Capital is good for is maybe somebody who aspires to have a large investment portfolio but isn't there yet. Because I tell you what, looking at your net worth increase chart in Personal Capital and seeing it go up over time, assuming we're not entering a long bear market at some point, it's encouraging, right? It almost gets addicting to see your wealth grow over time. And Personal Capital does a really beautiful job of showing you that. In terms of who Personal Capital probably isn't good for somebody who doesn't care so much about investing and maybe is just looking more for something that can help them strictly with budgeting. While Personal Capital can certainly do this, that's not its primary orientation. Frankly, there are some better tools out there on the market today if budgeting and tracking your spending is your number 1 priority. So Personal Capital probably isn't for someone who's just looking for a budgeting app or software or something like that, and that's it. All right, folks, that is my Personal Capital review. I hope it was informative. I hope it helps you make a decision as to whether or not Personal Capital is the right personal finance platform for you. If you're still not sure, I invite you to check it out. It's free, right? You might as well. You can use my referral link in the description below. And if you do that, you will, of course, receive a $20 Amazon gift card when you link an investment account with at least $1,000 in it. If you want to check out some other investing related content right here in the channel, I've got it for you. Right over here is my M1 Finance review. M1 Finance is a platform that I'm using more and more to automate my investing into low-cost index fund ETFs. I think they're likewise offering a sign-up bonus right now. And right down here is my video on investing for beginners, where I lay out what I believe to be the fundamentals for a lifetime of investing and wealth building. I'll see you over in those videos, folks. Bye-bye.